I talk about transitioning to Agile testing, some lessons from the trenches. These are some things that I've noticed and some colleagues that I've worked with have noticed that have sort of moved from traditional testing to Agile testing. There's some transitional points that make that ride possible, that make the results better. It's sort of a challenging transition at times, and that's the driver for this talk. And it has a Mythbusters theme. I want to, the way we're going to work is I'm going to talk about myth and then reality, and that's from my point of view. So there's a bunch of myths in transitioning to Agile testing, and then hopefully I bust some of those myths or some of those anti-patterns, however you want to talk about them along the way. As Michael said, please type in questions along the way. What I'm going to do is I'll go through the webinar. We have an hour and a half or 90 minutes. I'll probably stop about quarter after and take a few questions that are typed in. I may not get to everyone, but certainly we can take that offline, and I'll try to respond to folks offline with questions. So start queuing up your questions as we go. There's 15, which is quite a bit of content. There's 15 myths and then realities that I want to explore today. I'm not going to go through and read these, but it just gives you a flavor of the types of things we're going to talk about during the course of the workshop. So let's dive into the first one, and hopefully you get a flavor for this tempo that I'm trying to set up. So transforming your team is the first pattern, or the first myth-reality mix. And the myth, I think, is you need all programmers or highly technical testers when you move to Agile. There's this notion, you hear it at Microsoft and Google, of software developers in test. They call them SDETs or SDITs and things. And I can hear you, Michael, or whoever that is. So you hear this where, when you move to Agile, the traditional testers are sort of obsolete. Traditional testing, traditional functional testing, and manual testing, or having domain expertise is less interesting. That's the myth, and we need to sort of get rid of those folks and bring in these programmers who happen to have some testing chops. And I personally think that's a myth. I've never, when I've been staffing Agile teams and organizations from the inside, have I fired or removed or transformed the testers and thrown out that wonderful testing experience. I've had to augment it. The reality is a mix is best. So Agile testing, I do think, has a technical flavor to it. There has to be, a few members of the test team have to have perhaps some scripting skills or programming skills, but also the manual and domain-centric skills and technical chops are just as important. I personally like to have a mix. I actually think the reality is the most important skill set for an Agile tester in moving is the soft or collaborative skills. Folks who can work collaboratively with developers and with product owners and can have conversations and provide feedback, challenging feedback, can have, congruent conversations, can ask clarifying questions around value and content for requirements, for use cases, for user stories, can push back, can challenge developers, can challenge their team members. That are we testing the right thing? Are we designing quality in? Those skills, I think, are much more important, or at least equally important to technical chops in moving from a traditional team to an Agile team. And then another reality here is I think I want you to throw out all of that developer to tester ratio stuff, and what I mean by that is magic numbers. I don't know if it even was relevant in Waterfall, a 3-to-2 mix, or what's a common mix, 4 developers, 3, 4, 5 developers to 1 tester are common numbers that folks throw out there when they're composing teams. I think the ratios are a health check in Agile. For example, if I had an Agile team of 5 developers and 0 testers, a ratio of 5 to 0 would be unhealthy. So I would look at that as a health check, and I would probably want to add 1 or 2 testers to that team. But I don't think there's a magic number of 5 to 2. So throw that out as well. And then the team really, tests, the ratio blends. It's a whole team view towards getting the work done. So part of the ratio, throwing it out, is the fact that we need to stop thinking of developer silos and tester silos and throwing work back and forth between them, but we need to be collaborating as a team. So myth and then reality a little bit there. So that's one down. Another myth reality combination, or another pattern that I've seen a lot in the transformation, is I think there's a myth that you need 100% automation to start Agile testing. And it relates to the first one. Well, we need high technology, we need very technically programmatic testers, and what do they need to do? They're not going to test, they're not going to do exploratory testing, or they need to just write automation code, and then life is good. And we run the automation code, and we have, zero defect software. So it's a programmatic solution to software testing. And we just push a button at night, and then magic happens, and the software, meets the customer's expectation. And I don't think that's right. I think the reality is, I think automation plays an incredibly important part in Agile. It augments the ability of the teams to go fast, because they can get feedback. They can, to the degree that you have automation coverage, you can get feedback more quickly, and you can make adjustments. Developers can fix things. Testers can adjust the coverage proposition and adjust test cases and things like that. But I don't think 100% is the goal. I think there's other types of testing that are just as valuable. And you don't get to 100%. There's so many organizations that have 0% automation. So what do they do with this myth? Do they stop everything and then just write automation until they have 100%, and then they can be Agile? And I don't think that's, from a business point of view, that's not viable. So you need to have a strategy, an automation strategy, and you need to doggedly, and I repeat, underline, doggedly pursue automation where it makes sense, because it is this differentiator in Agile contexts. And to do that, you want to make it part of your backlog, and you want to work at every sprint or every iteration, and just make it part of what you do. The business has to buy it, is what I'm saying there, and you want to make it transparent to the business and make them buy it. There's certain organizations that even have targets. Salesforce is a classic example of an organization that if they have components or areas of their code that does not have 70%, at least 70% automation, they'll actually do 20%. They'll cut 20% of the features of their backlog, and they'll invest it in automation, in addition to whatever they were also investing. So they're taking features off the plate to invest in test automation. They're taking that penalties from a quality point of view so that they can go faster. They're thinking strategically from a go faster point of view. And I love that. I love the fact that, and that's organizationally, that's being influenced from the top down, because the leadership there really understands how to go fast, or how to enable the environment for speed, and quality and automation is part of that. Another part of this reality is that there are some excellent open source tools that supplement Agile automation. So I think the time of these monolithic tools, and I'm not going to name them and I'm not going to pick on them, but those typically user interface centric, we automate from the UI downward into the application tooling, and it's a one size fits all from major vendors. Those things are still useful, but there's so many alternatives now in the open source community for excellent tools that not only tack the application from the top down, but from the side and from the bottom up. So, and part of this strategy is leveraging unit testing, or test-driven development and unit testing from the bottom up. So instead of looking at the world from an automation point of view, from an architecture point of view, that we can only exercise an app from top down through UI, because it's very brittle. The UI is incredibly brittle, and then the automation will break, that we can come at it from the side, or we can come at it from the bottom, and we can use multiple tools in an automation suite, if you will, to attack the application. So that's another part of this reality, is not having a one-size-fits-all mindset or mentality. And then to support what I just said, there's this notion of an Agile test automation pyramid, and I found that to be the right strategy. Now, I'm not telling you which tools to pick,